Alright, I've got two more examples to look at in section 8.6. I'm hoping I can get them all in one video. This is another solving. These two example 5s are the toughest ones of the chapter. You need to factor what can be factored. In this case, if you notice on the bottom we have an x squared minus 9. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite everything, and I'm going to have the bottom of this fraction factored using techniques we learned back in chapter 4. So x plus 3, x minus 3. And then the right fraction stays as it is. So that's your first step. Anything that can be factored on the denominators, go ahead and do that. And now, just like in example 4, we're going to look to multiply both sides by something that will eliminate everything that shows up on the bottom of the fraction. So if you notice, we've got x minus 3's and we got x plus 3's. So those are the only two things that show up. They only show up one time underneath each fraction. So I'm going to multiply both sides by the x plus 3 and the x minus 3. And when I do that, everything should cancel on the denominator. So if you notice, when I multiply these two, the x minus 3's will cancel. And I'm left with the 6 and the x plus 3. The left side of my equation is done. I have no more fraction on that side. I'm going to do the same thing to the right-hand side. I'm going to multiply that to the first fraction. If you notice, everything cancels. Okay, that x plus 3, x minus 3 will cancel with that x plus 3, x minus 3. The only thing left over is the 8x squared on top. So I'm going to bring it down. The minus sign drops. When I multiply these two, the x plus 3's cancel. I'm left with the 4x and this x minus 3. So just like we had in the previous problems, everything from here on is just like it was before. We're going to distribute, get this as simplified down as we possibly can. So all I'm doing is multiplying the 6 and then multiplying the negative 4x to both terms. If you notice, we do have a quadratic. We've got 8x squared minus 4x squared. That gives me a 4x squared. The left-hand side is already simplified. And since my x squared term is positive already, I'm going to move these two terms to the right. So I'm going to subtract the 6x and the 18. And when I do that, I now have this set equal to 0. And I have 4x squared on the right. 12 minus 6 is a 6. And the negative 18 drops. Now this one, not as easy to factor, but it is factorable. If you notice, all of these are evens. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take out the greatest common factor, which is a 2. And when I do that, I'm left with 2x squared plus 3x minus 9. I just divided everything by 2. And now I have to use techniques that we learned from chapter 4 with factoring a 3-term statement that has something other than a 1 out in front. So we're going to multiply the first and the last. 2 and negative 9 is negative 18. Factors of negative 18 that will get a 3 is positive 6 and negative 3. If you think about negative 18, 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. 6 minus 3 is positive 3. So now we are going to factor by grouping. Keep in mind this 2 up here will bring down later. This is just what we did in chapter 4. Between 2x squared and 6x, we can take out a 2x. We can also take out from the other one a negative 3. And we're left with x plus 3 on both of them. This is all stuff that you should know how to do. So for my final factor, the 2 drops. X plus 3 is what's here, and then my leftovers is 2x minus 3. So from now, we're going to set each term equal to 0. And we will solve. So if I set that equals 0 and subtract the 3, you get x equals negative 3, so that's one of your potential answers. Over here, if I add the 3, you get 2x equals 3. Divide the 2, and you get 3 halves. So those are my two possible answers. So what we're going to do is we're going to test those because these could be extraneous. We talked about that in class. So I'm going to test -3 first. So if I plug -3 in and store that as x, and I type in my left-hand side 6 over x minus 3, and hit enter, it gets me -1. If I type in the right-hand side, which is this, again, it just takes practice getting this typed in quickly. You can do that on your own. If I type this in, though, if you notice, it gives me an error. Because what's happening is if I plug in a -3, -3 plus 3 is 0. You cannot have a 0 in the denominator. So this is an extraneous solution. That is not actually one of our answers. Okay, so even though we solved for this and we got it right and did everything correctly, it is not included in our answer. So let's test 3/2 and see what happens. So do 3/2 store x. Go back up here and type in the left-hand side, which was 6 over x minus 3. Get the number. Then go back up here and type in the right-hand side, which is this. Hit enter. And you get -4 for both of them. So this is my only solution for this question. I will do another example like this one on the next video. So if you want to see another problem like this, which I would recommend, then watch the next video.